I'm so excited for my daddy's podcast, and it's going to start right now.
Welcome to Volume 2 of the Lessons for Success show, the podcast heard by nearly 3,000 students, teachers, coaches, and others across the world. I'm your host, Adam Wardlaw, a middle school science teacher and high school football coach in South Carolina, USA. The goal of each episode is to share the stories of various people and the life lessons they've learned along their journeys. Before we get started, be sure you're following the show on all of our social media platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and yes, even TikTok. Simply search L4S Show. Just remember, it's the number 4. Also, be sure to subscribe to the Lessons for Success Show YouTube channel, where all episodes are uploaded. If you're an educator, coach, or business leader, feel free to send the links to these episodes directly to your students or employees so they can benefit as well. Without further ado, let's start the show.
Daddy, who's the guest on your podcast this week?
This week's guest is Dr. Matthew X. Joseph. Dr. Joseph has collected incredible insights on how best to support teaching and learning, and his work has led to nationally published articles and opportunities to speak at multiple state and national events. He's been a school and district leader in many capacities in public education over his 25 years in the field. Matt currently serves as the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment in Leicester Public Schools. He earned a master's degree in special education and administration and has his EDD in educational leadership from Boston College. You can keep up with Dr. Joseph by visiting his website, mxjspeaker.com, and by following him on Twitter at MatthewXJoseph. Enjoy!
Thanks for having me on today. My name is Matthew Joseph, and I'm recording this in Massachusetts. I work in Leicester, Massachusetts, which is about 40 minutes west of Boston, and with the traffic, it could be 3 hours. Who knows? I am currently a curriculum director. I oversee curriculum instruction and assessment. And my journey here went through working as an elementary school teacher, an elementary school principal, and also a district digital learning and innovation director. And one of the things I know that you and I talked before coming on was about kind of how my path got me to where I was. And for me, I grew up in Western Mass. I grew up in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, which is really a short bike ride from the New York border. And trust me, I know that because I tried it. And it took me a little bit to get over the mountain, as you say, if you know Albany at all. So I was about 15 minutes from New York State in Western Mass. And I grew up with, single family, my mom and my sister. And school for me as a young boy was a place that I would go and have my friends. The teachers were wonderful to me. And it was a place that I knew I wanted to be a part of throughout my life. And when I entered Springfield College, where I went to undergraduate, I went as an elementary education major because I knew in working in summer camps and knowing the impact education had on me, it was definitely the path that I wanted to take. And one of my current, to kind of also talk about how I ended up in elementary role and being an elementary principal, was really that foundational piece. And for a young boy, having those male relationships and having people guide you through, as a football coach, having that be part of your upbringing was something I was like, I wanted to do that for somebody else. But then the flip side of that, because this was like early 80s, and at the time there weren't a lot of single family homes and families. So I often felt that I was given a break, almost like people are like, oh, let Matt slide a little bit. And for a student like me, I took full advantage of all the breaks I got because people were being nice to me. But at the same point, I was missing out on some foundational pieces of education. So both I knew I wanted to get into education because it was a safe place for me, but also that I was driven to give back and see that setting those high expectations for students, no matter what their background, no matter what their shortcomings or their upbringing, was something that's important to me. And I kept that through both being a teacher and into my leadership, where really my drive is, I say, turning potential into power. Seeing people saw some potential in me as a junior, senior, and pushed me into some leadership roles. And I know that I'm where I'm at today with, nationally published articles and 2 books and speaking, and, not now currently, but having opportunity to speak in multiple states because those people pushed me to be my best. And that's what drives me. And even when you reached out 2 days ago and said, hey, chat, it wasn't about promoting anything. It was about, this is what we need right now, and to give back in any way you can. And maybe if one person hears this and does a little bit extra next week, next year, in 2 years, then it's worth the time.
You kind of had the unique ability to see school as a student, like we all have, and then now, on the other side as a teacher, and now you're at a higher level of leadership. What are some things that schools can be pushing, or not everybody has the same internal drive to want to go out and be this servant for others, but what are some things that schools can be pushing outside of the academic part of it, so that they are serving students that maybe come from backgrounds like you, or backgrounds that are more dire than you and I had to go through going through school? How can schools be trying to serve those students?
So that is definitely something to think about, because when we talk about education, the first thing, especially for students in education, meaning college students, you talk about lesson planning, you talk about curriculum, you talk about the pedagogy of school. But one of the things that we really have to start shifting towards is listening to our students. I'm a big advocate of student voice, because I really believe that students come to school and learn for somebody, not just from somebody because you're in the center of the classroom or you're in front of the classroom. And for us to build those relationships, the work I did, I went to Boston College for my educational doctorate degree, and I studied school culture, because one of the things I saw as a principal is that when we started to have a logo, we had a mascot, when we had a school spirit day, our attendance went up, our kids were more excited to learn, and people felt a part of something. And it wasn't just for fun, or it wasn't just games. It was that students felt connected to something. So to kind of dive into your question of what else we need to look at, how are we making sure students are connected to school? Because sure, our country, our districts are good at playing school. The bell rings, kids walk in and sit down. Teacher teaches, bell rings, and they leave. But are they connecting with people, or are they just going through the motions? So for me, as both a school leader and now a district leader, that is the one thing I stress from the beginning. I could give PD on instruction. I can give professional development on lesson planning. I give professional on how you're going to care for somebody. And I think that's the piece, especially now when we're a little bit more disconnected, but when we are in front of students, how do they know you want them there? And I think that's an important piece to really look at.
With coming from the perspective of students too, a large portion of the audience is middle, high school students, college age kind of students, and they might be sitting on the opposite end of this, where they're coming into a room where they don't necessarily feel like a teacher has their interest at heart. What are some things that you can kind of speak to those students about, just to give them some tips on maybe how they can function better in that particular environment, and then going through the rest of their school career and life beyond that, what are some keys you could give them about being able to function better?
Because if students are coming in, crossing their arms, sitting down, doing their work or not, the teacher's going to think you don't care either. And I think just having an opportunity to meet with the teacher, can I chat with you at lunch? Can I come in 5 minutes early? Because students are going to have different learning styles. For me, the teacher that I connected the most was the one who allowed me at a young age to do oral reports and to do presentations. And that, when essentially that teacher could have said, you need to write the paper. And it was something that I spoke about gaps in my own learning early in our discussion. That was definitely one of them. Was still not a great writer. And the teacher knew that about me, saw some of the work I did and allow me to do different types of assessments, not just saying I didn't have to do the work, but I video recorded myself. I did audio recordings of papers. I would write them, but then read them and speak them or give presentations to classes. So the message to students is find out how you like to disseminate your learning. What do you like to do? Do you like to blog? Do you like to create a YouTube video? Do you like to write papers? Whatever that is, express that and share that with with teachers. And the other half of this teachers, find that out about students, because when you find that common ground where students are displaying and sharing their knowledge in the way that's comfortable to them, it's amazing to see the products that come from it.
It's funny you mentioned common ground. That seems like something that in society we can never find. You watch the news and it's one side saying this is the best way to do things, and the other side saying the opposite. And we live in a world where it's my way or the highway. I think it's interesting that you point out that just finding common ground and being able to work together is kind of one of those prime things of relationship developing, and then after those relationships get developed, you start to see the achievement in other areas. A lot of the things you're talking about to me transcend just school, but other organizations as well. I know it kind of transcends into sports. For the coaches out there, if you were talking to the leader of a business or another organization, what are some things that you feel transcend just school, or extracurriculars activities at school, that would help those people with what they do on a daily basis?
Sure. I think, looking at athletics, looking at business, looking at education, I don't think we try enough. And what I mean by that, let me dissect that a minute. It's not that we don't give effort, and it's not that we don't give attempts. We don't try something. If it doesn't work, we build off of what we initially tried. We quickly go to something else. And I really like to talk about prototyping in education. What I mean by that is throw out an idea, and if it doesn't stick, if the idea is fundamentally where we want to go, build off it and try something, and let 5 people try it and really work together to find out things that are working. Same with students. And I'm a proponent of letting them continue to try to learn versus the one-shot test, grade, move on. Because if we're in the business of learning, then we continue to try. And let me tell you, and when we were talking to start, I know you have some kids and have a house, and you must have house chores and projects, and so do I. I can tell you half the things I tried to do in my own house didn't work the first time. And I went to YouTube and looked up how to do it and continued to do that. And I think letting our students have that same opportunity, because we're in the business of learning. We're not in the business of just disseminating information. And I think that goes for athletics, extracurriculars, because we're in the human service business. And you're a coach, you're going to get new every year. So if your system is built for one type of athlete, and another athlete comes in who can do what you're looking for, but not exactly how you want, if you're not adapting, it's not the athlete's fault. The coaches have to adapt as well as the teachers. So that was a long answer to, I think, more prototyping and trying and learning from our mistakes. I hear, the big buzzword is fail and try again. I don't like to say fail, because that almost gives the impression that you tried it, you weren't successful, you go to something else. I'm someone that talks about missteps. If there's a misstep, learn from it and build off it. If there's a play in football, dive right, whatever, 22, and there's the hole's blocked up, you're going to go, okay, we're not going right again, we're going left. And you just learn from the current information you have, evolve, pivot, and build off of it.
I think that's one thing that goes back to kind of the day and age that we're in. People just aren't patient enough to really tinker with, what they're trying to put in place that they feel it would work. But they're too quick to say that it, like you said, was a failure, or they want to just jump to something else that maybe is a one size fits all option. They don't want to take that time to really tinker with something. I think that this day and age that we're in now, currently when schools are shut down with the COVID-19 outbreak, and there's a lot of people realizing that, hey, this is not going to be perfect. We got a lot of students that are trying to learn solely off computers with distance in between them and their teachers and classmates. But now more than ever, you need to be patient. Let's modify as we go, and hopefully we can figure out a solution, especially in a time period where it doesn't look like we're going to be all together anytime soon. So, one thing you mentioned before we started recording was that you had a book out. You want to kind of tell the audience about, your work and kind of what it's all about?
Creating collaborative schools, because I think when we work together as a building, as a staff, as a district, we are going to accomplish more, because I've learned from so many other people. Why aren't we learning from each other? And my second book that just came out from Times 10 publication is called The Modern Mentor, and really taking that collaboration piece in schools and putting a structure to supporting others. And it's not just, we talk about mentoring and we just think of first-year teachers and maybe second-year teachers if we're in a district that supports that. But mentoring is your entire career. I'm 48 years old, a doctor in education, and I look to other people to help me in this field still. And what are we doing to put into practice some of those strategies in our schools? So the book, The Modern Mentor, talks about first-year teachers and supporting them. Also talks about building mentors, not just selecting the teacher that's the next door over because it's convenient. And then looking at peer-to-peer mentoring, how are you supporting your colleagues? And then I think a piece that gets lost a lot is how are we mentoring our leaders? Education is a field that if you're great at one part of it, if you're a great teacher, we're going to make you a whole different job and be a principal. They're totally different jobs. And we are not giving the support to a lot of our leaders that I have seen to take that next step into the leadership role. We're looking at budgets and evaluations, very different than being in the classroom. So we dive into what it takes to mentor sitting leaders and aspiring leaders as well.
Dr. Matthews, I think both of those topics we could kind of get into for hours on end, and we might have to do that down the road just to kind of dive into this some more. One thing I like to do to kind of wrap up these interviews is just ask our guests if they had to suggest one thing that is kind of a key to achieving more, being more successful, whatever you want to call it. What would that look like in your own words? And for all the listeners out there who might be students or teachers themselves or coaches or just employees trying to be better at their own jobs, what do you feel like transcends every different line of work that'll still help those people find success?
Look in the mirror and look and recognize and reflect where your shortcomings are. And what I mean by that is when I was principal at 34, probably too young to take that job, but I had the opportunity. I tried to make sure everyone knew I was the boss. And the things I didn't know, I just faked it. And it didn't work out so well. And it wasn't until I realized the skills that I didn't have, I wanted somebody to help me. I wanted support. I wanted to learn better. And I think knowing your shortcomings is more important than knowing your strengths. I mean, I was at Boston College at 42 years old with a book published, and I'm bringing my dissertation into the Writing Center. And as I told you before, I'm not someone who's confident in my writing, even though I have had some success. I went in, brought in my dissertation. There's a 19-year-old English student there who's in the Writing Center. I said, "Can you just proofread this for me?" And I was obviously confident but at the same point vulnerable enough to do that. But it made me a better student. I just had an article published in District Administrator magazine. I sent it to a colleague who I said, "Can you just read this? Can you look it over?" And knowing that part about my skill set has made me better. And what it's also done is allowed me to collaborate with other people, because other people are seeing me reach out as, wherever you put my level of success. And they feel like, okay, if it's comfortable to do that, I'm going to do the same. And I've done a lot more co-presenting and a lot more co-authoring articles. It's product. And so that would be my advice to anybody, from students to aspiring teachers, to first-year teachers, to veteran teachers, to aspiring leaders, to current sitting leaders. Where are some of the shortcomings that you have? And then find someone to fill that gap, and then give back yourself, because typically you're not going to have two people exactly the same helping each other out. So that would be my advice to everybody.
Dr. Joseph, thank you again for giving me your time this afternoon. If anybody out there listening wanted to get in touch with you or go and find what you're sharing out there with the world, what would be the best way to keep up with you?
Sure. I'm very active on Twitter. I have other social media platforms. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn, and most of my accounts are pretty much just Dr. Matthew X. Joseph. And my Twitter handle is Matthew X. Joseph. Very active there and like to share. If you want to check out some of the work that I put out, it's techinnovation.live. It's just blogs and check it out. And I also like to walk the walk. If you have a question, if you want support, if you want help, email me. It's drmatthewxjoseph@gmail.com, and we will connect. And especially over the next however many months, we might need the digital help or talking like we are. I am there for you and willing to talk, but it's not a one-way street, because I'm going to be asking you, if you heard my last answer, what is something you excel at and help me out too. So I'd love to collaborate, continue to chat, and walk the walk.
Daddy, I'm learning so much from this podcast.
I appreciate the time Dr. Joseph took in order to join me on the show, and I thought his insight provided some great lessons we can all pull from, no matter what profession or stage of life we're in. Let's review this lesson for success. Throughout our lives, we're going to be in contact with many people who we can be learning and benefiting from, and we can also impact others as well. Dr. Joseph emphasizes the importance of connection with others. In your life, you should be seeking people that can make you better. This can only come from accepting that you have shortcomings that you may not be able to see. Seek the input of others so that you can continue to develop over time. Dr. Joseph emphasizes that knowing your shortcomings is just as important, if not more important, than knowing your strengths. When you know where you lack skills, then you can get started on improving in those areas. This translates beyond education and should be implemented by others in every industry if they truly want to be getting the most out of their lives. That's it for this episode of the Lessons for Success podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to screenshot the episode and share it on social media. Before you close the app, be sure you subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to also tune into the daily episodes of the show, as well as some of the past interviews we've had with a variety of guests. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next time on the Lessons for Success Show podcast.